I'm Ann Simmons, reporting from the newsroom of the Los Angeles Times. It's become a household word throughout the United States. Gluten, a protein found in wheat, barley and rye, is a stabilizing compound in many common foods such as ice cream and ketchup. But for many Americans, it can cause serious gastrointestinal problems. Gluten-free foods, shops and even kids' camps have sprung up to cater to those who can't tolerate the substance. Skeptics view the gluten-free craze as a fad because many people who embrace a gluten-free lifestyle have never had an official medical diagnosis. But believers insist that staying away from gluten has improved their health. Mary MacVean, the Mind and Body editor at the LA Times, has been following the gluten-free movement and joins me to chat about it. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks.
So Mary, is this a fad? How many Americans are trying to lead a gluten-free lifestyle?
The answer is yes and no.
Okay.
A third of people from consumer surveys are trying to stay away from gluten.
Right.
But it's thought that 1 in 133 people have celiac disease, which is the most serious problem for people with gluten. And for those people, even the tiniest trace of gluten can give them 2 weeks worth of illness. It leads to osteoporosis, to some cancers. It's a very serious disease. Then there's a whole range of people with less serious issues, including people who have just decided it's a better way to live. And those people are the ones that the skeptics have kind of started making fun of. I've had cooks tell me that they have people who come in and are very serious about having a gluten-free meal, and then they order cake for dessert, which is full of gluten. So yes and no is the answer.
So what does this mean for gluten-free products?
Well, for people who really can't eat gluten, it's been kind of a bonanza because there are just hundreds and hundreds of new products all the time. And serious companies and cooks have been trying to figure out ways to make delicious alternatives to foods that normally have gluten. Even very fancy bakeries now are introducing gluten-free items.
So tell us about the fact that, can you actually get an alternative, a gluten-free alternative for every single kind of food?
Pretty much. Whether or not it's delicious is another question. Bread is probably the most difficult thing to make gluten-free because gluten is an essential ingredient to bread. It's what creates bread as we know it, basically. And it's to try to do that without wheat flour is very difficult. Sandwich bread, for instance, frequently falls apart if you don't eat the sandwich instantly. Some packages suggest toasting the bread so it'll taste a little better. Bread's a real hard one. Pizza, bread, croissant, things like that are really difficult. But there are alternatives. I haven't seen any gluten-free croissant, and bakers tell me, forget it, it's never happening. But everything else, yes, there pretty much is a gluten-free alternative. I even got in the mail yesterday some gluten-free Pop-Tart style pastries. So they're not Pop-Tart brand, but you can have your gluten-free Pop-Tarts now for breakfast.
That's fantastic, my goodness. So this actually, that's really good for children. I mean, how is it for kids who are trying to follow a gluten-free lifestyle or who have to for health reasons?
Right, I think it's really hard for kids actually because they can't, birthday parties, for instance, they can't eat the cake. Pizza parties, they can't eat the pizza. They often can't eat in school cafeterias because for kids who have celiac disease, they can't eat food that's not carefully separated and segregated in the entire process from foods that might have gluten. So unless it's made in a dedicated facility just for gluten-free food, it's not possible for them to eat the food that's in the cafeteria because there can be airborne flour, say, that lands on their food that can make them sick. So they do have a pretty rough time.
Now, does this also mean then that they can't enjoy activities like camp or, going out with their friends? I understand that you were recently at a gluten-free camp for children.
I was. It can mean that. And I went to a camp in the San Bernardino Mountains that's called Camp Gluten-free. And I have to say, I was really surprised at how fervent the kids were about what a difference it made to them. The kids I talked to said it's unbelievably wonderful for them to be in a situation where they're just living their lives and they're not having to worry. One girl said, I don't have to ask the first question. And what's the first question? I said, does it have gluten? And she has to ask that every time she's anywhere. Right. And for them to just go in the dining hall and eat is a really big deal. And I thought this was interesting too. When I talked to the boys, middle school boys can be pretty harsh, and there were boys who told me that they're constantly teased, and kids will like put gluten food in their faces and say, yum, yum, you can't have this. And yeah, so for them, I think it really was a big deal. It was a much bigger deal than I had anticipated for them to have that week of total freedom.
Well, this has been such an interesting conversation, Mary. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be reading a lot more about gluten.
Yes, we will.
And for more on this and other stories, please visit latimes.com.